When you talk about bumping a player, it's pretty much
great courage. One that says the bump is dead, that's how you deliver it.
What is going on, YouTube universe? My name is Trent. Some of you guys might know me as Zirra from other content I throw out onto YouTube, and welcome to my new AFL channel, The Hip and Shoulder. If you're new around here, this channel is going to be your one-stop shop for everything AFL related, and that is going to include things like weekly podcasts, Supercoach videos, tipping videos, and just general AFL-based content. I've made AFL-based content for a while now, and outside of doing AFL video game content on my gaming channel, I also hosted footy tipping competitions, as well as doing round recap podcasts in the way of having a discussion about the week that was in football and anything that particularly struck me out of certain games or talking points from the AFL itself. And I feel that set the groundwork to transition to this channel, and I'm really looking forward to expanding this brand and really, you know, creating a strong community of AFL loving supporters just like myself. And that kicks off officially with the 2024 Hip and Shoulder tipping competition. If you guys do AFL tipping throughout the year and you want to get on board the Hip and Shoulder's first ever AFL tipping competition, I will leave a comment down below as well as a link in the description for you guys to click on and come over and join. The last few years that I've done have been great because the banter between all the players has been pretty on point. I love facilitating competitions where not only we get to make content like this and we can put our tips out and we can have discussions about teams, but also just seeing people bounce off of each other and come together as a community. I really love that fact, and that's what we're trying to do here. Considering this is a new channel, it's going to take a little bit of time to grow, but I'm really excited about the community that we can build here. With all of the housekeeping out of the way, it is time to look at the opening round of the 2024 season, which is actually called Opening Round, or Round Zero, for those who are referring to it as that. And I can get behind the concept, but I don't really understand why only 8 teams were selected for this, and it now throws a secondary bye for every team into the mix. I think it's a bit of a clusterfuck mechanically. Obviously it's worked well because the 4 games that are playing this weekend are sellouts, or at least all of them are close enough to being sellouts. So the fans have gotten behind it. And for those of you that are unaware of what opening round is, it's the AFL's initiative to bring more eyes onto the game within the northern states of Queensland and New South Wales, which here in Australia is a more NRL rugby dominated state in Queensland and New South Wales. Obviously they have the state of origin against each other. They have prominent teams in both of those states as well. And it's a bit of a struggle for the AFL to kind of compete with those states when it comes to getting eyes on the football. So the fact that we have 4 sold out games, or 4 games close enough to being sold out, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think all of them are sold out from off the top of my head, is huge for the game. It's great. I again just don't understand why it had to be a limited round. I don't understand why an initiative like Gather Round or Magic Round, which was dropped last year, where every team went and played in Adelaide, I don't know why we couldn't just move Gather Round up to Queensland one year, or facilitate it in New South Wales one year, where every team can play. It gets more eyes on the games over the weekend. You know, supporters that support those teams in those states have the chance to see their team play. I think it's just a missed opportunity. But I'm not going to get into that because we could be here talking about opening round for fucking ages, because I know while some are behind it, some are against it, and it's caused a bit of controversy and a bit of backlash within the AFL community. But we've got 4 games of football kicking off this week, and as a Richmond supporter, seeing my boys play this week is going to be huge, especially given the circumstances of the game that they are going to be within. But we're not going to talk about that game yet, because it kicks off tonight at the SCG with Sydney hosting Melbourne. Now, this game's interesting because coming off of the practice games, we kind of had a little bit of a look at how certain teams are going to play this year, especially those teams that have new coaches. And Sydney and Melbourne come into this season as two teams that played finals at the back of last year. We know Melbourne, after winning that grand final, have fallen kind of off the pedestal a bit the last couple of years, back-to-back years where they've been bounced out of the final series in back-to-back finals campaigns. And we now have Sydney, who I feel should be in the top echelon of teams given their list. And we've seen them struggle a little bit. We've seen them be thereabouts. And it's kind of hard to gauge how this game is going to go, because Melbourne had a good showing against Carlton, whereas Sydney kind of dropped off a little bit against Brisbane. And both teams are coming in with a little bit of a different makeup. We've got Sydney obviously have traded in Taylor Adams, who won't be playing this game because he is injured. They've brought in both Brodie Grundy and James Jordan from Melbourne, who I think both are going to add particular strengths to the Sydney team. Peter Laddams has been a strong competitor for Sydney in the ruck, but I feel they've always had that main number one ruck spot kind of up for grabs, in the essence of when it's come up against other teams, Laddams hasn't been able to hold his own against certain ruckmen. And now that they have an established ruckman in Brodie Grundy, I feel that can get first use to the Sydney midfielders, which I think is something that they have lacked. And with the list Sydney have, Brodie Grundy could take them to the next level. And then you've got James Jordan, who comes in, a brilliant outside user of the ball, can go into the middle as well and also get in and under. I think he's going to add a lot of polish, and Sydney are a really speed-based team. They like slingshotting out of defence and moving the ball quick, and I think James Jordan facilitates that movement. Melbourne, on the other hand, have had a huge off-season. They've been in the media left, right and centre, and it's mainly been because of the discovery that Smith has been trafficking drugs and has tested positive for drug use on game day. The issues with Clayton Oliver, which I have personal opinions about. I won't divulge into them because it could cause a discussion that we're not here to have, but I'm just going to go out on a whim here and say that I think there's a lot we don't know about that is being kept behind closed doors. Simon Goodwin has been in the media about potential drug use as well, and you know, he's their coach, so kind of gets a narrative going that all of these problems are creating a bad culture. Clayton Oliver is playing this game despite all those off-field issues, but I don't know how Melbourne are going to cohesively work as a team this year with all of those issues kind of in the back of their mind coming into this season. They obviously want to shake those off, but we know the media here in Australia are fucking persistent, and we know they're going to run with this story for as long as they can milk it for. So I definitely feel Melbourne are kind of on the back foot a little bit. Obviously, Angus Brayshaw, one of their more prominent players, forced into retirement only a few weeks ago due to all the concussions he has had, which is so unfortunate because I really enjoyed watching Angus Brayshaw play football. I rated him as a player. But this game, I think the fact that we're playing it at the SCG, obviously a different shape to the MCG, Sydney play a lot better on this ground. I've got a feeling in the back of my mind and, you know, deep down within me that Melbourne can cause an upset here, but I think it's hard to back against Sydney at home. I think when we look at the teams, they are evenly matched. I think just Sydney's speed might be a little bit too classy for Melbourne to control, and Melbourne do have some rather pivotal outs of their team compared to Sydney. We can argue that Sydney, obviously missing Taylor Adams, is going to be a little bit hard for them, but the outs for Melbourne are some key components that we have seen in recent years, you know, be critical to Melbourne winning games. So for that fact, I'm backing Sydney, and I'm going to back them by 17 points. That's the number I've had in my head all week. So I think tonight, Sydney kick off the AFL season with a win against the Demons. We then turn our attention tomorrow night to the Gabba with Brisbane taking on Carlton. And the last time we saw these two teams play, we saw Brisbane have a rather emphatic win in that prelim last year to get them into the grand final. Closing the door on Carlton's season made me a little bit happy deep down. I've got some reservations about Carlton, just on a personal level. You know, I think all of us have some teams where we're kind of a little bit inclined to be a little bit more negative towards. But I think this game is going to be a great game. You know, Carlton are going to have a chip on their shoulder, especially about how last year's game ended. They want to come out fighting and, you know, get that first win on the board against a team that demoralized them, would probably be the best word. Whereas Brisbane, we know historically, have locked down the Gabba and perform on that ground like no other team I've seen before play on any other ground. They've got such a home ground dominance that I still struggle to try to understand how they can be so dominant on that field, but then it doesn't transfer over to other grounds that they travel to. Carlton, obviously, without some key components, Jacob Wiedering out of full back, I think is going to be a big loss for Carlton, considering they're going to have to try to lock down Joe Danaher, Eric Hipwood, you know, then you've got the little forwards, the small forwards like Charlie Cameron, Lincoln McCarthy. So the spread defensively is going to be very interesting to see. Sam Walsh out of the middle as well, I think is going to be a huge loss. He was voted the best finals player for 2023, and he didn't even make the grand final. A lot of people have him potentially as a dark horse for the Brownlow this year. Missing the first couple of games is going to be a bit sore for Carlton. I know they bat deep in the midfield, but I think Sam Walsh is one of those generational players that is very hard to replace. And when you think of losing a player like Sam Walsh and you're coming up against a midfield that boasts two-time medalist in Lachie Neale, McCluggage rolling through the middle, you know, you've got Jared Berry, who is a tackling machine. You've got Dunkley rotating through there. You know, they've got other younger players that are starting to come through that rotation as well. I think Brisbane are going to be a little bit too hard for Carlton to maintain. I think they're probably going to win this game. I'm going to guess by about 23 points. And they're going to kick their year off strong. Brisbane, I say it every year, and I'm going to say it again. If Brisbane cannot win a premiership with the list that they have currently, I do not know where their next premiership is going to come from. I really don't, because on paper, they've got one of the best teams in the competition, and I don't know what it is about them, again, traveling to other grounds. I don't know whether it's a mind game that they have to break out of. But at any rate, I think they kick off their 2024 campaign rather strong, and they're going to knock off Carlton by a handful of goals. Saturday afternoon down at Heritage Bank Stadium, we have Gold Coast taking on Richmond, which has become a modern day rivalry, maybe, considering that, you know, Richmond haven't really lost many games just before or just after the siren, but unfortunately Gold Coast have pipped us twice now. And this rivalry has now heated up, given the fact that we know Damien Hardwick stepped away from Richmond as head coach and wanted some time off, and then halfway through the year, he gets appointed as Gold Coast's new head coach. So it's essentially coming into this game, it's Damien Hardwick versus Richmond. And both of these teams are going to now be playing a different brand of football. We've got Damien Hardwick, who is now controlling a very young Gold Coast team, and during the practice games and the match simulations that we have seen, Gold Coast have now embodied a more longer kicking style of football, which Richmond under Damien Hardwick was one of the top rated longest kick teams. And over the preseason period for this year, Gold Coast are now ranking as one of the longest, you know, ranged kick teams. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Gold Coast operate, especially moving the ball out defensively. Whereas Richmond now have Adam Uze at the helm, which excites me a lot, because I loved Adam Uze as a player, but I've loved what he's done at Melbourne in the short time he was there, especially with their midfield, because I believe he was the midfield coach, or involved with the midfield at least, at Melbourne. And we see how dominant that midfield has been. You know, Max Gawn, Christian Petrarca, Oliver, Viney, you know, those types of players. Their clearance work has been great. You know, the tap work from the ruckman has been great. So having Uze now at the helm, we've kind of seen, at least in the practice games and match simulations, a bit of a bump in Richmond getting control of contested ball in the midfield and clearance work early. I know we dropped off against Collingwood in that practice game and we ended up losing by 30 points, but you have a look at the start of that game and Richmond were dominating the clearance. They were moving the ball out from defence rather quickly. The defensive pressure was great. It was just lack of execution in front of goal. Richmond could have put the game away early. Kicking 1-7, I think, in the first quarter was so hurtful. But just seeing Richmond kind of coming into a new era as a Richmond supporter is very exciting. Obviously, no Tom Lynch for this round. Jack Graham doing a quad within the dying minute of that practice game against Collingwood absolutely killed me because I love Jack Graham as a player. Dustin Martin now under an injury cloud. I think he still plays, but they might want to take the conservative route and keep him for that round 1 hit out against Carlton. So I don't know what they're going to do with him. This game I honestly think is a 50-50 coin flip. I think both teams at their best play really good football. Both of those teams are going to come into this game with completely different game styles to what we're used to seeing these teams play. I think a big out for Richmond is going to be Toby Nankervis, but we finally have a solid backup for him. I rated Ivan Soldo, don't get me wrong, but Ivan Soldo found himself on the out so much due to injury, so I feel he wasn't able to fully reach his potential with Richmond, and I think at Port Adelaide he's going to perform incredibly well. But Sam Naismith coming in, I think he brings that same kind of grunt that Nankervis has, and they're almost a like for like in my eyes. The only difference being I think Naismith is more effective as a player that can go forward and kick goals. You know, he had a great season last year in the VFL, and I'm glad he's got another chance at AFL level. And hey, the last time we stole an ex-Sydney ruckman was Toby Nankervis, and we went on to win the premiership. So I'm just saying there could be something on the cards, but I'm very excited nonetheless to see this new look Richmond, especially with players like Josh Gibcus coming back from long stints on the Pine, players like Steely Green, Seth Campbell, Lafau, McAuliffe, players that I think are all going to get a chance to debut this year. Probably people are going to think I'm a little bit biased here. I am going to do something a little bit different and back Richmond in this game. I'm only going to back them by 9 points. I think this is going to be a close game either way. Whoever wins, it's going to be a close contest. As I said, I think this is a 50-50 flip, but I got to go with my heart sometimes. My heart tells me that Richmond's new style can be competitive enough, especially if we can get a start against the Gold Coast like we did against Collingwood and just be a little bit more effective in front of goal. If we can keep up that pressure for 4 quarters, I think we're going to put in a really good showing. And the final game of the round, probably my game of the round, is another prelim match, rematch, another modern day rivalry that has really heated up over recent years. It is going down at Giant Stadium, and it is GWS taking on the reigning premiers in Collingwood. Personally, I probably would have had this game round 1 to open up the season. A lot of people want to see grand final replays, but I think this game right here has marquee written all over it. Both teams have a very strong claim to winning this game. GWS had a very great showing against the Gold Coast last week. Collingwood had a slow start against Richmond, but then they went back to their processes and they got the job done quite comfortably in the end. Collingwood, for me, are still coming into this competition as the most informed team. I think they are going to go back-to-back this year. Just their chemistry and how they work together is unlike anything I've seen for a long time. I really feel this could be a three-peat team that we're looking at. And then when you look at the three-peat teams and you compare them all, I think Collingwood would be up there as one of the best if they do get a three-peat. I just think cohesively they're one of the best looking units we have seen for a while. Whereas GWS, they've always been thereabouts, but they've always just fallen just short of the mark. And I feel that's always been a little bit of fault to the fact that they've never had all of their gun players fit and firing at the same time. We've always had a Josh Kelly carrying injury, or a Lockie Whitfield carrying injury, or Tom Green can't get a full season out there. Jesse Hogan has struggled to get out there. They've got a really good, solid young crop coming through. And I think this year, with all of their senior players coming in, you know, full-bodied, fresh-bodied, ready to go. Some people are saying that Jesse Hogan could be a good shout for the Coleman this year. I'm personally looking forward to seeing Tom Green absolutely dominate. Toby Green, again, gets appointed last year as the All-Australian captain. He's finally kind of gotten the bullshit out of his game, and when he focuses just purely on football, he is so incredibly exciting to watch. He is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, non-Richmond player to watch week in and week out. He is absolutely incredible, and this game I think is going to come down to the wire. In true Collingwood form, I think Collingwood is going to win. I'm actually backing Collingwood to win this one by 5 points. I think it's going to be less than a goal. It's going to be very tight. Two teams going to come out absolutely firing, but I think the reigning premiers are going to want to start their season off strong in that premiership defence, and I think they're going to be a little bit too tall of an order for GWS to knock off. So just to recap the teams I am locking in for opening round, I am going with Sydney, Brisbane, Richmond, and Collingwood. Again, if you guys want to get involved with the hip and shoulder tipping competition for this year, the links are down in the description of this video as well as down in the comment section. Get on board, come have some fun, and I look forward to all of you guys, you know, just supporting this new venture that I'm on. Speaking of support, before I get ahead of myself, if you guys do enjoy the content I put out, I would appreciate it a lot if you hit that like button down below, because it does go a long way to supporting myself, and I seriously cannot thank you guys enough for all the support you've shown so far on my predictions video, and especially on the Super Coach video. It tells me that, you know, people are really enjoying this content early on, even though there's only a couple of videos out there. So it really enforces to myself that this is content that I'm really going to deep seed myself within. I'm really looking forward to having this channel go in a completely upward trajectory, fingers crossed, and just sharing my love for AFL with all of you guys at home. If you want to support myself further, feel free to hit that subscribe button. For those of you who have already subscribed, I appreciate you all so much, and to anybody who does choose to subscribe from this point, thank you for getting on board. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. I'm stumbling over my words too much. It's time for me to go have a coffee and sort my shit out. Good luck to your teams if they are playing this weekend, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.